Welcome to this edition of Local Focus, the magazine show featuring community stories that we hope will entertain, inform, and perhaps even inspire. These are stories of people, programs, and events that make a difference right now in our cities and towns. I'm Rama K. Ramaswamy. Today we're looking at historic buildings in our communities, where some see eyesores, others may see architectural significance. Where some see a deep, dark money pit, others see a diamond in the rough. Some of our stories today include a look at the oldest continually operating mill in the country, a walk in Wellesley with a local historian, and a profile of a documentary about a once grand Needham estate that has simply disappeared. But first, a controversial debate in Weston that many other communities confront may be nearing resolution. After 2 years of intense study, the Josiah Smith Tavern Old Library Working Group unanimously recommended that the old library become a branch of the new Weston Public Library and serve the community as an arts and cultural center. Town meeting in May will decide the fate of the project.
Hi, I'm Marissa Mora. I'm the co-chair of the Weston Historical Commission, and we're standing in the reading room in the old library. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about this space and a little bit about the library's history. This is a beautiful, beautiful room. If you can see around you, we're surrounded by these lovely mullioned windows that have columns on the outside and lovely light from the inside. And up above on the ceiling are these beautiful oak rafters, open raftering with a hand finish to them that gives them a lovely sort of liveliness and shows the craftsmanship of this room. This room was really meant to be the main room where people could come and enjoy what the library had to offer in Weston. Now, Weston's library was started in 1899. It was actually completed in 1900. And this room was extremely elegant at the time. When it opened, it had a electrified chandelier. This building was entirely electrified, one of the first ones in town. When this building was built, it's an interesting style because it's a mix of what we sometimes call Jacobean, and it also has quite a few classical elements. In the hallway, there are these lovely Doric columns, and when we move into that space, you can see it. There are demi-lune lights and demi-lune spaces. And the outside is a mixture of classical front door with beautiful Ionic columns and these mullioned windows, and also the classic kind of Tudor and Jacobean styling of a steeply pitched roof, large parapets, and gable-ended brick, Flemish bond brick and limestone trim. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the architect of this building. His name was Alexander S. Jenney, and he, like Stanford White of McKim, Mead & White, got his early training at MIT and under H.H. Richardson, who had recently, in the late 19th century, completed the Trinity Church project. He also began working with McKim, Mead & White on the Boston Public Library and essentially became the head of their Boston office and oversaw the project until it was completed in 1895. He then came and moved to Weston and moved here, and they determined that he would be a very good selection to design the public library. Obviously, he had a tremendous amount of experience, having just worked on probably the grandest public library in America at the time.
What we want to do is take a look at the library, and the first thing is to appreciate that it was built 100 years ago with the best materials and the best workmanship available, and in fact has stood up with practically no maintenance for that whole 100 years. But the time has come that it needs to be repaired. Even quality of this type can't last forever. And the main problem that we're dealing with now is that moisture is infiltrating the roof and the masonry from above, rain and so forth, snow, and from beneath through the earth. And both of them are doing quite a bit of damage on the inside, which we will look at later, but there's quite a lot you can see of damage on the outside. We're on the exterior of the library. I'm standing in front of these wonderful decorative brackets that are part of the canopy over the front door. And it's very important to point out that while we look at the details of the deterioration of this building, to the masonry, to the roof, to the interior, to point out that if you don't repair it, the rate of damage accelerates. And the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost to repair it, which is obvious, but I think it will increase in cost exponentially because it will accelerate the deterioration. We need to deal with this right away.
Repurposing often saves historic buildings. Waltham's watch factory building was built in the 1850s and was converted several years ago into housing and commercial space. Recently, a cloud security firm called CloudLock expanded into the new space at the watch factory. Waltham Newswatch explains in 2 back-to-back videos.
We are a cybersecurity company, and what that means is that we help companies use cloud applications similar to consumer applications you're familiar with, like Dropbox and Google Drive. But we have media companies like Pandora or large retailers like Whirlpool that use us on a daily basis, making sure that their sensitive data stays in the right place and making sure that the bad people stay out. But we started in 2011. We started here in Waltham. We were pretty small back then, but we've been growing. The Watch City Factory is an amazing building location. It's amazing on the water. It has a lot of history and character. We're probably maybe the first industrial facility in the US. And we love how it's been renovated, and we love keeping a little bit of the old and the new, and that makes it a great location for us. And see the type of space that we're trying to create. We're trying to knock down the walls, have people sit in a collaborative environment. We got an award by Inc. 5000 as one of the top 100 growing companies in the US, and also by Forbes, we are the #1 cloud computing startup to work for. It's all about the culture and about the people that come to work here. We pride ourselves on getting the smartest and best people that we can, and fostering this collaborative and engaging environment. We're changing the landscape around cybersecurity. So people who are watching and interested in a fast-paced, engaging career should check us out.
The Watch Factory remains the city's most magnificent architectural pearl. As the second of 3 phases nears completion, we got a tour of some of its new loft-style apartments.
We have a lot of different floor plans, just because this was a factory, so we have apartments that were all restored to already fit a space that existed.
The 96 units are rentals, not condos, and range in size from 600 to 1,300 square feet. Most are 2 floors.
You have 2 entranceway closets, and then you come into your living room, dining room space. A full bath and 2 bedrooms in this unit are on the top level.
This is a 2-bedroom Riverview unit. It runs $2,600 a month and is roughly 1,000 square feet.
Courtyard view for one of the bedrooms, and then you're gonna have the river view from the other bedroom.
Here's the main room of the most expensive apartment of the lot. A 1,300 square foot 3-bedroom corner unit with a river view. The rent is $3,100.
Then you come into a much larger bathroom. This one has exposed brick and it has 3 windows. The 3-bedroom, you have your stackable washer and dryer outside of the bathroom in the hallway.
Parking will be in a lot across the street, currently being paved. The apartment block was once home to various watchmaking departments. In the units we toured, you can see the limitations of designing within the existing structure.
So it's galley kitchen. They all come fully applianced, GE appliances.
Storage is limited and the only hardwood is on the stairs.
Some people live in a town their entire lives and never know much about its history, but not Josh Doran, who was born and raised in Wellesley. For Josh, a summer job at the Wellesley Historical Society turned interest into passion. Now, several years later, he's part of the Historical Commission, the town board devoted to protecting historical buildings and structures. This Wellesley media story aired several years ago when Josh was still at the Historical Society, but the information is timeless.
Born and raised in Wellesley, Josh Doran has always wanted to know more about where he comes from.
I grew up in an old Victorian house, so I just liked history, and a few summers ago I contacted the Historical Society asking them if I could do some work during the summer, and they said sure, we'd love it.
Now, years later, Doran has become an integral part of the organization that sits on Washington Street.
About a year and a half ago, the Education Committee, which I'm on, we met and kind of brainstormed ways to kind of just put Wellesley history out into the public. And one of the ideas we came up with was put together a historical walk.
Armed with the Historical Society's resources, Doran started researching.
So this is the Wellesley Farms Railroad Station, which still exists down there. It was built in 1890, and it was designed by Henry Hobson Richardson, who was a world-famous architect. He designed Trinity Church in Copley Square.
Josh has a passion for Wellesley history. He started at the Wellesley Historical Society researching primary sources and secondary sources, and then went on through the internet, and there's so much information available.
The first walk focused on transportation and how it shaped the town.
By far the most important thing to the early development of this area was the arrival of the railroad in 1834. It wasn't just that people who were living here could now go into Boston to sell their crops or buy supplies. Rather, it brought a whole bunch of wealthy businessmen here because they saw Wellesley, or this area, as a wonderful place to build their summer estates.
While the second walk highlighted the development of Wellesley Square.
The whole reason that Wellesley Square exists at all is because of that building right over there, the Wellesley Village Congregational Church.
The Wellesley Historical Society's mission is to serve as a resource center for the town, and these walks are a big step in the right direction.
Almost everybody in the second walk had already been on the first walk. People are really enjoying them. It's a very engaging process. It's interesting. We have been lucky to have some excellent weather.
The positive feedback probably has something to do with Doran's enthusiasm.
There's so much about Wellesley history that I don't know and very few people know today. It's just been lost. And so when we uncover these kind of little hidden gems, it's just fantastic.
Combined with a ton of information.
I guess April 6, 1881, the town was officially incorporated kind of as a gift to the town. Horatio Honeywell, who had bought up all of this land here, he donated part of it to the town and had built on the top of the hill there what you see, Town Hall.
2 walks under his belt, Doran and the Historical Society are already looking to the future and are in the process of planning more walks for the community to enjoy. For Wellesley Media, I'm Natalie Kaplan.
Arlington Public News took a tour of the old Schwam Mill recently. The Civil War era mill is the oldest continuously operating mill in the U.S. Their picture frames grace the walls of the White House, the Vatican, and many museums across the country. Let's see how craftsmen are keeping the tradition of making oval wooden frames alive today.
Since 1630 and for the next 235 years, the site would be home to a constantly evolving set of structures, including a water wheel, steam turbine, and workshops, which would power the evolving uses of the mill, which over the years included everything from spice manufacturing and making piano cases to constructing the oval picture frames that the mill is most well known for today. The Schwam family, which the mill is named after, first acquired the mill property in 1864. The Schwam family had immigrated from Germany and converted the mill to woodworking, especially for the use of making signature oval picture frames. In 1888, a water turbine was added to the mill to supplement the existing steam engine power.
The water used to run in here under the bottom of the building. The wheel itself did not look like your classical mill with a wheel on the outside. It was inside, under the ground, inside, lower than the level of the ground. This was real useful when things froze solid around here.
Since 1969, the mill has been funded through a combination of donors and tenants, which over the years have included artisans specializing in areas from pottery, silver making, printmaking, design and manuscript making, to sculpture and a string instrument workshop. To this day, Schwam frames and moldings are in major art museums in the United States and are included in the collections of the White House, the Vatican, Buckingham Palace, the Palace of the Kings of Hawaii, and the collection of Queen Sylvia of Sweden. Today, the mill exists as a living museum that honors the heritage of the site while continuing to operate as a workshop space, accurately reflecting the living American history that it represents. For more information or to schedule a tour, please visit www.oldschwammill.org.
A recent weekend had 50-degree temperatures and a few patches of snow. Not an ideal setting for the annual snowshoeing trek organized by Live Well Watertown and the Recreation Department there. Instead of canceling the event, it was turned into a walking tour around beautiful Gore Estate, whose carriage house was recently renovated. Watertown Weekly News took a camera to follow the group of Watertown residents as they learned about the estate and enjoyed some beautiful weather.
Today, the Live Well Watertown group came for an outdoor tour of Gore Place. We mostly focused on the history of the estate, the life of Christopher and Rebecca Gore, what features existed on the estate 200 years ago, and how the estate is used today.
We did have a great event today. It was supposed to be a snowshoeing event here at the Gore Estate with the Live Well Watertown, but everything turned out great. We had a great tour of the facility here. Some of the highlights, the carriage house here was great. The farms, the kids got to see the animals, so that was great. And just over the years, how much this land has developed to, I never knew it was a golf course. There was another owner that had sold cars here, so just the revolution of the property over the years, just amazing. And Natalie did such a great job from the Gore Estate doing the tour and having probably about 40 people here today. So it was a great event, and the weather worked out great. We couldn't get to do the snowshoe, but the sun was great.
We walked around the large mansion, which was built in 1806, and walked down to the farmyard area, got to see the sheep and the chickens.
Live Well Watertown is offering all kinds of healthy living programs in the community, as you know, and we've been doing a lot with recreation through a Marshall Home Fund grant. And this is for programs for adults 55 and older. So this was one of the programs that was partially funded by the Marshall Home Fund.
We had some families here that do other activities through the recreation department, so that was great. So it was, you know, younger and old, so it was a great mix. The kids got a lot of things out of it, and I know the adults did. We had some older people who just love to get out and hike. And it's a good social piece because the community's together, the kids are interacting with them. It was a good feel, and just so much community, and Watertown's always been a great community of just connecting. So I thought that was a big part of the day. We walked probably about 1.5 miles around the whole facility, so it was good. I think everyone got a little exercise today and a little culture, so it was a great day.
The estate is actually on the Waltham Watertown line, so I'm currently standing in Waltham, but the farm portion of our estate is in Watertown. The Gore Place is open to the public, so year-round people can come and enjoy the grounds. It's a really nice place for picnics in the spring and summer. In the winter we actually rent snowshoes, and people can even bring their own snowshoes or cross-country skis on the property. And then we have tours of the mansion as well during the week and on Saturdays.
In the 1860s, William Emerson Baker retired from his sewing machine business with a vast fortune and purchased nearly 800 acres in Needham. His estate was widely regarded as America's first amusement park, but it is now gone. Derek Reisner from the Needham Channel produced a documentary about the estate, and here's a preview of Beautiful and Bizarre, William Baker Ridge Hill Farms.
Beautiful and Bizarre is the latest documentary from Derek Reisner that takes a look back on Needham's rich history. This time, the story focuses on somewhere in town that has been lost to time, and the man behind the peculiar place.
William Emerson Baker was a millionaire that lived back in the 19th century who made his money in sewing machines, and then he decided to retire at the age of 40 and buy this huge plot of land in Needham. It was about 800 acres. And turn it into his private playground. So it had comical peculiarities, it had lakes, it had museums, and a lot of interesting things, and pretty much everything was surrounding all his ideas.
Even in retirement, though, Baker had big ideas that he wouldn't leave to rest.
One of the things he was really passionate about was what they called the pure food movement. And basically it was the idea that food could be made healthier if the animals that were being turned into this food were made healthier. Pigs was the big one that he was obsessed with, almost to a rather odd and extreme extent. He actually had statues to pigs on his estate. Yes, statues. And obviously people even back then thought he was a little weird. Very weird. He had a very almost childlike way of wanting to bring his points about. He couldn't really help himself when it came to just goofing off.
Not everyone agreed with Baker's radical lifestyle, though, especially town officials of the time. Then, when parts of Needham became modern-day Wellesley, Baker's property was split. This did not bode well with the rebellious inventor, who decided to turn his estate into its own town named Hygeria. Unfortunately, due to opposition from courts and political enemies, many of Baker's dreams never came to fruition. After his death, his estate was divided, and very little of it remains today.
It's the story of the man, but it's really also the story of the estate, probably even more so, and in a celebration of what it was, and also kind of a memorial to the fact that it's gone now. It's a very interesting story into sort of the life of an estate and the life of a man who was trying a lot of things to change America. I think it's a fun documentary. I had a lot of fun with it, and I hope people will have a lot of fun with it, and they'll learn something about the history of their town.
For the Needham Channel News, I'm Jillian Tedesca.
When we think of Lexington, we usually think of the Revolutionary War period, Minutemen and Patriots' Day. For a change of pace, we look at the mid-century modern movement in Lexington through an exhibit that ran last year in the town's Historical Society.
My name is Elaine Doran, and I'm the curator and archivist for the Lexington Historical Society. The mid-century modern movement in Lexington is a very important part of Lexington's history. This town was chosen for a reason. That's why the architects came here. They came here for the open and natural farmland that existed on the borders of the town. It was cheap at the time. Their houses that they wanted to build, they wanted to site in natural surroundings. They didn't want clear-cut lots. They wanted ledge. They wanted, fields, and it lent itself perfectly to their designs.
I'm Susan Bennett. I'm Executive Director of the Lexington Historical Society. A lot of disciples of Walter Gropius founded a firm called the Architects Collaborative, and in the late 1940s and early 1950s, they found that Lexington, for many reasons, was a great place for them to experiment not only with their architecture, but with building what they considered utopian communities. And that's why we called the exhibit Lextopia. It was more than just the architecture. It was really a social movement that they were bringing to Lexington.
Rick Beyer had an idea that we should have an architect's office as part of the exhibit, and I couldn't agree more. And we remembered Phil Ponelli, and he worked with Walter Pierce at his firm. And we called Phil, and lo and behold, Phil still had his desk from the time that he worked at Walter's firm, and all of the tools and things that he used at the time. And he was more than happy to loan them, and came down here and set the whole thing up for us. And we couldn't be happier with it. It just looks terrific.
I'm Susan Ward. I'm an independent curator living in Lexington. So I worked with Elaine in general on the exhibit, and then concentrated more on the design research and the Estabrook School element. Many people in town who didn't grow up in these neighborhoods or who haven't seen them, I think it might make them aware that there was a lot more interesting things going on in the 20th century in Lexington. It's not just Revolutionary War period. And I'm hoping it'll sort of broaden people's minds to think about the whole history of Lexington, because there's really a lot of interesting stories from every period.
So that's our show for today. We leave you with a fun musical piece from Belmont Idol. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Just a second, we're not broken, just bend, and we can learn to love again. An unfortunate slide. Give a little time to me. We'll burn this out. We'll play hide and seek.
Really like icy, go to a party and drink up that Atari. It's been a week, and shawty, you can't even speak. I'm making friends with your red receipts.
How did you choose that song?
Well, I was inspired by many people in my life, and I thought I could resonate to that song very well. It has a very powerful meaning.
When did you find out you loved singing?
I don't know, I've really always enjoyed making music. It's just something that I really feel comfortable with.
What's your favorite type of dance?
My favorite type of dance is hip-hop.
All right, let's hand it over to you, judges.
It felt very personal, but you obviously were also playing to the audience, and that's a hard thing to do, and you did it very well. It's really hard to do a song like that a cappella. It's hard without accompaniment, and you really pulled it off.
Because you really did some nice moves that really interpreted the words.
The runner-up of Belmont Idol 2016 is... Can I get a drum roll? All right. Enya Zhang. And now, the part you've all been waiting for, the two winners of this year's Belmont Idol are, another drum roll please, Leah and Bella, and free shipping.